This video is going to give you an overview of assignment 2, the compensation structure case study. So this assignment, similar to assignment 1, is based on the Zenith Medical case study. In this assignment, you will be preparing a job evaluation classification pay structure and a pay for knowledge system for Zenith Medical. In your assignment, you should be including 4 items: a report, the pay structure, a pay for knowledge skills block, and the Excel spreadsheet that you used to calculate the benchmark amounts for your pay range that is to be included in your classification pay structure. The due date for this assignment is Friday, April the 19th, as shown in your teaching and learning plan, and so that's week 13. I will accept late submissions, but with a deduction. If it's 1 day late, it'll be 2% deduction, 2 days, 4%, 3 days, 6%, and 4 days, 8%. Any assignments submitted later than 4 days late will not be accepted. This assignment has 4 parts to it. Part 1 is the compensation structure. So you are expected to set up a pay structure using the classification system as your job evaluation method. Please refer to chapters 7, 8, 9, and 10 to help you get started. In part 1, you're setting up your grades. So you're going to be using a template that I have provided in the assignment folder to create your compensation structure. Part 1, or your task 1, is to determine the number of pay grades that will differentiate one level to the next. This means that you have to establish operational definitions for each grade level. Then you must sort all of the jobs in Zenith Medical into each of the grade levels. You must use the job classification template for this section. The task 2 for part 1 includes a write-up in your client report. In the client report, you must provide a rationale why you are setting up the pay grades the way that you did, including an explanation of your pay grade spread, and if there is an overlap, why is there an overlap? For part 1 of the assignment, you must use the compensation structure template as shown on the screen. So again, that's found in the assignment folder. That template is set up for 7 grade levels in the structure. Now, you can reduce the number of grades, but you cannot submit a pay structure that has less than 4 grade levels. You have to have a minimum of 4 grade levels for this assignment. So here on the screen, you can see that the expectation is that for each grade level, so here on the screen, you see 3 grade levels. So in this section, you will type in your grade level definitions, and they need to be based on your 4 compensable factors, and that is skill, effort, responsibility, and working conditions, okay, as we discussed in class. Those are your 4 compensable factors. So your definitions need to all represent 4 compensable factors, but you need to further define them beyond just the general term skill, effort, responsibility, and working conditions. Remember, this is a web-based company. Also, in this template, you have to take all of Zenith Medical's 35 jobs, and you have to determine which of them are going to be in your classification and which jobs are you going to use for your pay for knowledge system. So whatever jobs in Zenith Medical you're going to use in your pay for knowledge system, I should not see those jobs also listed in your pay structure. So if you've identified maybe your management positions as being part of your pay for knowledge system, then your management jobs will not be listed in your compensation structure. So you'll deduct them from your 35 jobs. So suppose there's 5 management jobs, that means that you have, that means that you'll only now have 30 jobs that you have to sort into the pay grades. So you have to take your jobs listed in the case study and determine which pay grade they best fit in. So you'll be matching your job descriptions to the pay grade definition and then typing those job titles into the bar underneath. So here you have your pay grade. So here you have your pay grades, and then underneath your definition here, and your jobs were going to be typed in here. Then you'll have to, in this section for each pay grade, identify which jobs that you've slotted into this pay grade you will use as your benchmark jobs. So those titles of those jobs need to be listed in this field over here. The next thing that you have to do is you have to establish your midpoint base pay, and that's going to be done using benchmarking. And that data will come from your Excel spreadsheet that you've calculated. And then you will decide with your assignment team what will be your pay range spread around that midpoint. Okay, so your benchmarking data establishes your midpoint, but then you use your organization's and rationale to determine what's going to be your spread. Okay, so I would recommend that you take a look at the Towers Watson and World at Work data that I have posted in the assignment folder that gives you some recommendations about approximate spreads that you should set for different types of job classifications. So take a look at that as a guideline for determining what is the appropriate spread around the midpoint for your pay structure. So part 2 is benchmarking your compensation structure. So as I said in the previous slide, the midpoint of your pay range is established by benchmarking. So in this assignment, you have to identify the benchmark jobs for each pay grade using market data. You have to use at least 2 sources of market data to benchmark your jobs. And for every pay grade, you have to benchmark about 50% of the jobs in each of the pay grades. So if you've slotted, say, 10 jobs in a pay grade, then that means that you have to benchmark at least 5 of those jobs if it's appropriate. So that data will be calculated and listed in your Excel spreadsheet. In terms of your client report, you have to talk about, for this section, for part 2, how you selected the benchmark jobs. So what was the criteria that you used to select them? And so provide your rationale as to how you selected your jobs for benchmarking in each of the pay grades. Then discuss what factors you considered when sourcing out the market comparator jobs. So you should be taking a look at some information in Chapter 8 to help you do this. So provide a detailed discussion of what factors were considered when using your market comparator jobs. When you're completing your benchmarking activities for the classification structure, I have provided you with an Excel spreadsheet that is found in the assignment folder, and it looks like what you see on the screen. So here you have to list all of your benchmark jobs for the grade, and then you have to put in the following columns the market comparator data that you found. So you have to find, I'm saying that you have a minimum of 2 sources of external data, and then if you want to go above and beyond, you can do 3 sources of comparator data. But you have to do that for every benchmark job to establish the average midpoint. So you'll see that I have it pay grade 1, pay grade 2, pay grade 3, etc. So you have to do this benchmarking exercise for every single pay grade. So I need to see that completed in this Excel spreadsheet, and that will be submitted to me with your assignment in your appendices, or you can submit it as a separate document with when you submit your client report. So part 3 of this assignment is setting the pay ranges. So I've already talked about it, where that's located in the Excel spreadsheet. But so in this section, your first task is to set the pay ranges for each level in the pay grade structure. And your data from your benchmarking jobs needs to be what you use to establish the midpoint, and then you have to establish the maximum and midpoint, minimum point for the pay range around that benchmark midpoint. And again, you should be referring to either Watson Towers or World at Work for a recommended spread. So use that and then consider, how many levels of the pay range you have to determine what is appropriate in terms of spread for each of your pay grades. And then in your client report, you have to establish your pay range policy. And that is, you have to talk about what would be your pay policy for your employees in relation to your pay range and how they move up in that pay range. So what is the criteria that will be followed by the organization to determine how they move up in the pay range for each of the pay grades? So that a policy needs to be outlined in your client report. And then I also need to see what is the criteria used to establish your pay ranges. Again, referring back to this template, you're going to set your pay grades using your benchmarking data, and then you're going to have to set the minimum and the maximum point. And so please also recognize that when you're setting your midpoint, you have to consider, are you going to take a lead, a meet, or a lag pay policy with your pay structure? If you are taking a meet, that means that that midpoint will stay the same. But if you are going to take a lead, that means that midpoint will be increased, or if it's a lag, that midpoint will be decreased. So if you're taking a lead or a lag strategy, you need to tell me exactly by how much you're taking a lead or a lag. Is it like 2% or is it 5%? And if so, you have to give me a rationale in your client report as to why you're taking a lead, meet, or lag pay policy. And if it's a lead or a lag, how much are you leading or how much are you lagging the market? And that needs to be reflected in your midpoint. You also have to remember to age the data. And aging the data should be 3%. So suppose I'm taking a lead strategy with 2%. Then that means my benchmark midpoint, let's say that it's A, needs to increase by 5% because I'm leading the market by 2% and then I'm aging the data by 3%. So it will always be 3% for my aging. The last part of the assignment, part 4, is setting up a pay for knowledge system for Zenith Medical. So your client has asked that for one of the job groups, you're to design a pay for knowledge compensation strategy. Your job is to determine which job group is the most appropriate and to figure out how that will be set up. So you need to design a pay for knowledge system for establishing base pay. So you have to select a job group, and your first task is to select the job group and provide a rationale in your client report as to why you selected that particular group and how you think that that group will benefit from a pay for knowledge system. The next step is you have to set up a pay for knowledge skill block. That means that you have to identify competencies and write out the training blocks for each of the competencies. And then you need to also, when you're setting up your skill blocks, price them out using the high-low method. And then you also have to develop a pay policy for your pay for knowledge system. Basically, the policy will explain to your employees how they will move through the pay structure. Write it as if it's going to be going into an employee handbook. So for this assignment, there are 4 documents in total that you'll be submitting to me: a client report, a pay for knowledge skill block, a job classification template, and the benchmarking spreadsheet. So this is the template that you're going to be using for part 4 pay for knowledge. So that's found in the assignment folder. And you'll see that I have indicated that you need to have 5 competency clusters in this pay for knowledge system. You must have 5. You cannot have less than 5. Exactly 5. And then each of those clusters has 3 skill blocks that are associated with each of those competency clusters. So you have to write them like they're training outcomes. And then also on the skill block, you have to put the dollar value that for each of the skill block to represent the increase in base pay as they complete each of the skill blocks. And remember that the pricing is based on the high-low method. So I would refer back to chapter 4 on how to complete the pricing of a pay for knowledge system. So just to repeat, the expectation for submission is that your assignment includes a client report that should be 2 to 3 pages, double spaced. You can go longer than 3 pages. This would not be a deduction. In fact, it just simply means that you've taken more time and more energy and to complete this assignment. Okay, so I do not want an assignment less than 2 pages. Really, it should be around 3 pages in length. It should include a title page, a table of contents, and appendices. In the appendices, you will have the pay for knowledge skill block, the job classification structure, and the Excel spreadsheet. Although actually probably only these 2 will you'll put in your appendices. Likely because this is an Excel, you can submit this separately, or you can do screenshots of your Excel spreadsheet and put it into your Word document as an appendices. There's our additional resources that can be found in the assignment folder. I've provided you with the sample job classification grade definitions, so you can take a look at that and how that was structured. I've also posted a document that provides some guidance around ranges, pay ranges and pay spreads. So you'll see an image that's in that folder, and it provides you with the Towers-Watson and the World at Work recommended pay spreads for your pay ranges. Also, I do want you to age your data by 3% when you're doing your benchmarking.